Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, we're down at a friend's place today and we're just doing a little bit of work on their JCB backhoe. Backhoes have got so many hydraulics on them that there are always leaks somewhere. And this is their old backhoe. It doesn't get used a lot because they did actually replace it with a newer one. But they've just kept on with this one, kept using this one regardless. They seem to need both of them at certain times of the year, so we keep patching this one back up to keep it going for a little bit longer. Today what we're going to be doing, the stabilizer legs, there's one on each side for the backhoe, and the seals on them are leaking. There's a hydraulic ram down the middle here with the two hydraulic hoses up the top here, and down here in the middle there is a seal that is starting to leak on the rams. So this one isn't leaking too badly. The one on the other side was leaking a lot, so we've already taken the ram out of this. I didn't have my camera with me the other day when we started this job, but we're going to go and have a look at the ram, how the ram works and how to get them apart to rebuild them, and what is inside them that needs replacing. So this is the ram out of the backhoe here. The pin holding it on is seized in here because this end always ends up in the mud and dirt. So the first thing we've got to do is try and get this pin out, and that's going to be a real nuisance. This is a double acting ram, which means there's two pipes here. This pipe here goes to the top, and there's another pipe there that goes down to the bottom. This is for the hydraulic fluid, so there's a piston in the middle there, and depending on which pipe we put pressure to, the ram will either expand or contract. There's nothing difficult about these rams once you know a little bit about them. So as soon as we can get that pin out, we'll take the rest of it into the workshop and pull the ram apart. The problem with this ram is that this seal here is leaking, so we need to change that. But while you've got them in bits, generally the parts for them are not too bad as long as your rod is in good condition and nothing nasty's happened to your cylinder. The piston and other seals are reasonably cheap usually. So I'm going to try and get that out now, and we'll come back and have a look at it when we start pulling the ram apart. Okay, so we've got the ram on the bench, so we'll just have a closer look at it quickly. We've got the two pipes here that go up to the two hydraulic lines. If you've only got a single acting ram, you will normally only have a top connection up this end, and this one is not used. The single acting rams, there's not that many of them on agricultural machinery anymore. Most of them are double acting rams. There's a whole bundle of different ways they connect. Often you just put a flexible line straight onto a fitting here, because this one's in the leg of the backhoe. They've got steel lines and they're welded on at each spot, so you need to be careful when you're moving it around not to bang these and damage either the line or the weld there, because that's an extra thing that you have to repair. Now this one is leaking badly and we assume it's out of the seal here, but we couldn't actually see, so we will be cleaning this up to make sure we can't see any cracks in here. If they're cracked, because the oil has worked its way into the metal, you get your main crack, but there's always microscopic cracks in there as well, and the oil has, under pressure, has worked its way into all of those cracks, and they are very, very hard to repair. You can try welding them, but the oil just keeps burning out of there and you don't often manage to get a good quality weld, even if you've ground it out and done all the proper prep. This is the cylinder or the barrel. This is the rod here. Now the rod is chrome plated, and the chrome is exceptionally hard. You won't touch that with a file, but the metal underneath, the chrome plating is only very, very thin, and the metal underneath here is quite soft. If you've got old rams, that metal in there is really good for turning on the lathe once you take the chrome plating off. It's really nice steel. But we need to inspect this to make sure there's no damage. If we look, I don't know if the GoPro will pick it up, just here we've got a little bit of pitting and a little bit of scoring. Down here, I think that's mostly just dirt on the outside, and we can carefully go over that with a wire brush or some really, really fine emery paper or a little bit of really fine steel wool, and that will clean up. That down there is just dirt, so we will clean that up. You're not, as long as you're careful, you're not going to damage your chrome plating too much, but you do need to be careful. This is an old piece of the rod here, and the other thing that we need to look for is little pit marks like this. This is where something has happened to the chrome and the water's got in underneath it, tiny little pinhole, and it has started rusting from underneath. When this happens, the rust expands under the chrome and pushes the chrome up, and that damages your seal. Ideally, you get this you get this re-chromed. You can get it done. If you're on a budget, polish that up with a fine piece of emery paper, and you will get away with it for a number of years if it's not a ram that you are working really hard. Now, to get this apart, there is a big nut on here. Now, all hydraulic rams work on the same basic principles, but they're all slightly different as to how they're held together. Some of them have got circlips in here with an end that you pull out. Some of them have got rods that run the whole way down with bolts on them. You just need to have a look at your particular ram and work out how you get your particular one apart. So the next thing to do is to undo that, and then we can pull the cylinder, the rod and the piston and that end seal out all as one piece. The other thing I meant to mention is, although the chrome is hard, because the steel underneath is soft, you need to be very careful about knocking this with your tools, or when you're getting the ram in and out, or when you're working around the machinery, because you will put dents in here reasonably easily, then wherever there's a dent or a deformity or a scratch, it will not seal on this seal properly, and you are going to have oil leaking out. Okay, so we've got our ram set up in the vise, and we just want to undo this. They can be quite tight sometimes. And this one's not going to play fair. Okay, so these can be very difficult to get out. My camera wasn't working properly, but we ended up heating this up. We tried hitting around here. We tried a cold chisel on here to give it a bit of shock. We wondered if this had been Loctited in. Sometimes there's also a pin or a grub screw in here to hold them in. There's all sorts of variations that they use on these rams. Anyway, we've got it out. We could also see elastic oozing out around here, so somebody's had it apart once before. There should be an O-ring in here, but this looks like it's just elastic that somebody has put in there to try and seal it up. So next we can just there's another bushing in here that needs to come out, but normally when we just pull the ram out, it will come out with the ram. Okay, so we've got this other bushing out, and this just helps to keep the shaft centralized, because you don't want it putting all the load on the seal that's in here. So the shaft runs in here. This has got a taper on it that sort of locks in on this section of the ram here, and that just keeps it all centralized. Now down in here we have got the piston, and it's jammed in there at the moment. If I slide it in a bit, it will run freely through its normal section of travel, but often you get a little bit of rust up here, so it's just a matter of working away at it, moving it in and out and turning it until you can actually slide it right out. Okay, so we've got the piston and connecting rod down on the floor here. We've got our nut up this end with our seal in the end here, and what should be an O-ring here. We've got our guide bushing here. Down this end we have got our piston. Now these, it's got a whole bundle of seals on it. So these are just like piston rings. There's a couple of hands to do this. Whoops. So we've got a bundle of seals. We've got these two outside ones. We've got these ones in here, which once again are basically piston rings. This one's been squashed fairly badly at some point, and then that's a rubber seal in there. Usually these seals and the seals up there are not that expensive. Some rams, depending on what brand of ram it is, have ridiculously expensive seals in, but it's still better off changing the seals than changing the ram. These nuts on the end here are often incredibly tight and held on with Loctite. This one looks like somebody's put Celastic on it to hold it on. That feels more like Celastic to me than anything else. You do not want these coming undone while you're using your piece of machinery, because it's a fair bit of work to take everything apart to put this back on. So I'm going to try and get that off next, and then we'll have a look at the piston. Up here with the ram, we've got just an empty cylinder now. And if we look down in there, you won't be able to see it on the GoPro, but I can see hone marks in the side of the cylinder right down the bottom still. And that's a good thing. These rams really shouldn't have too much wear on them, because they're not used that often. Like, they're not used as often as your digging rams on the backhoe. So this should be good to just clean up all of these parts, get new seals and reassemble it. Okay, so we've got our ram in bits on the bench here. We've got our main rod here with our end cap. This should have an O-ring in here. There should be a seal in here. Now this seal has completely disintegrated and there is just the metal outside cage for it. And there is the remains of another seal in here. So we need two seals and an O-ring to repair this. There's no seals in this at all. The piston's a bit unusual. I thought the nut was going to come off and leave the piston on there, but actually the piston is threaded on here rather than the nut. Just a different way to do it. So we've got the outside wiper seal, we've got these two spacer seals, we've got the big rubber seal in the middle there, and then we've got the same on the outside. Two more of these, and then one of the outside wiper seals. On the end of the shaft, we've got an O-ring to stop the oil leaking back down through the threads when it's under pressure, and also another O-ring on the inside of the nut just here. It's a little bit hard to see into that one. So there is nothing in here that is really difficult to deal with. It is just that they are awkward because of their size and how tight everything ends up being on them. But there is no reason why, if you've got a leaky ram on your machinery at home, you shouldn't have a go at pulling it apart and resealing it. So we've got to go away and get seals for this now, and I'm not sure if I'll be the one putting this back together, because I'm not, well, they're shearing next week here, so I'm not sure when they're going to have space for me to come back in. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. and I hope this has given some of you the confidence to pull your hydraulic rams apart and at least have a go at repairing them. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!